Thank you for tuning in to the Leroy Brown Talk Show on 92.9 WYBO, The Soul Mine. Today we have a lot to cover, and President Trump's transcript came out with the president of Ukraine. We're just going to dive into it. It first starts off by saying the president congratulating President Zelensky. He goes on to say, "Congratulations on the great victory we all watched from the United States. You did a terrific job. That way you came from behind somebody who wasn't given much of a chance, and you ended up winning easily. It's a fantastic achievement. Congratulations." Now, there's a lot of back and forth on this, and I just don't see the smoking gun. Like, I've never seen the smoking gun that the Democrats are trying to say that they now have of, the president crossing the line. Because the president says, good, because I hear that you had a prosecutor who was very good and was shut down. That's really unfair. A lot of people are talking about that. The way they shut your very good prosecutor down, and you had some very bad people involved. Mr. Giuliani is a highly respected man. He was the mayor of New York City, a great mayor. I would like him to call you. I will ask him to call you along with Attorney General. Rudy very much knows what's happening and is a very capable guy. If you would just speak with them, that would be great. President Zelensky went on to say, "I wanted to tell you about the prosecutor. First of all, I understand and I'm knowledgeable about the situation. Since we have won an absolute majority in our parliament, the next prosecutor general will be 100% my person, my candidate, who will be approved by the parliament." And the president said, "Well, she's going to go through some things. I will have Mr. Giuliani give you a call. I also hope the Attorney General Barr will call you, and we'll get to the bottom of it." What they're talking about here, and, it's no secret, our good friend Uncle Joe came out, and his son took some money from Ukraine, took some money from China. And it doesn't look good on Joe Biden's part, because here you have a guy who in no way, shape, or form was involved in politics, but yet he flew on Air Force Two. And the simple fact, in 2014, then Vice President Joe Biden was the forefront of the American diplomatic efforts to support Ukraine's fragile democratic government as it sought to fend off Russian aggressions and root out corruption. So it raised some eyebrows when Biden's son, Hunter, was hired by a Ukrainian gas company. The Obama White House said at the time there was no conflict of interest because the younger Biden was a private citizen. Now, here's the thing that I do want to stress. The Democrats have gone nuts on anything that Trump's kids have done when it comes to working in the White House, when, it comes to his son, Don Jr., running Trump's affairs while president. Yet, it was never a conflict of interest that you send your son to go collect a ton of money. And, if you're saying, well, Leroy, it wasn't that much money. It was several $billion. And when you go over there and, you don't have much to begin with, and then all of a sudden, now you're worth billions of dollars, I'd say that is a lot. And, I would say, no matter how you chop it up, it is a conflict of interest. Say what you want. The truth speaks for itself. There is no such thing as, oh, well, he's a good kid, or, you don't put yourself in that situation. I mean, like, when I was an Army platoon sergeant, I used to tell my privates all the time, don't get caught doing the wrong thing, which also means don't put yourself in the situation that you're going to find yourself doing wrong. And, I don't know if it was the way that I was raised or, whatever. But my dad always told me, look, you don't go outside, after dark, especially by yourself. No good comes from anything after midnight. If you're going to drink, only have one beer, wait 2 hours, have, some soda and some water in between, then get in your car. Don't be that person that drinks and drives. And yet, you have the situation where you have people who, well, I didn't know I was doing wrong. And, regardless what you think of Trump or, Hillary, if you didn't do anything wrong, Hillary Clinton, you wouldn't have erased your email box. You wouldn't have erased your files. You wouldn't have, wiped your hard drives. That's something a guilty person does. And anybody that sits there and goes, well, you're just saying that because you're a Republican. Well, see what happened is you're a Republican and you're just saying that because you're a Republican. No, I'm saying that because I'm a realist. And, I said this so many times this week, I'm getting tired of saying it. If it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck, 9 times out of 10, it's a duck. And, the Democrats, they push for this impeachment thing before the transcripts come out. Now that the transcript has come out, it's all of a sudden, we need to hear the audio because obviously the transcript is going to be different than the audio. No, you jumped the gun as always, being the idiots that you are. And I mean that if you're a Democrat and you think for whatever reason, I'm just being somebody who's just doesn't get the facts. Here are the facts. You jump the narrative on the Mueller investigation. You jump to conclusions before you had proof. And the deeper you dug, the more guilty you made Obama look. You made Biden look. You made James Comey, your Boy Scout, look. And the more guilty you made the Clintons. And, I find it amazing, and, I just want to point this out. I'm not saying one thing has to do with the other, but it kind of seems like anytime there's a corruption scandal that goes on with the Democratic Party, and it takes over the news, i.e. Jeffrey Epstein, the corruption within Ukraine or China, some type of, when the blowback is back on the Democratic Party, some type of tragedy takes place out of nowhere. And, that's something that, I think that's worth looking into as well. Because you don't just have out of nowhere, some guy who's a law-abiding citizen go off and do something crazy when, all the fingers and the eyes are at you. The most guilty person is the one who's most often found with the target painted on their back. And, I do want to stress the fact that, I would like to, see more about, I know Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his jail cell, but, before he committed suicide, there was a lot of things that showed the Clintons, hands in that. There was a lot of celebrities that went to those islands. There's a lot of money that changed hands there. How come out of nowhere, this whistleblower comes up with a transcript. Once again, it's there. We got him. We got him. Then you have the turtle guy, whatever his name is, the Schwartz guy, the guy who looks like a turtle every time he talks. He gets up there with the Democrats. Just, it's always this. No, I'm sorry. We've only had 2 presidents that were, rightfully in the wrong when it comes to the fact that they were impeached. Johnson was impeached because he wanted to help out the South during the Reconstruction era, and they weren't about to have that, so they impeached him. And Grant became president, which then you had the the history lesson of where the South just got the wrong end of the deal and found itself further down in the Reconstruction era. But my point is, we had two presidents, Johnson and Clinton, who were both impeached. They both finished out their terms of presidency. So what are you going to do? Are you going to start? You were hoping you were going to get him on fake news of the investigation for Mueller. Now you're going to start the new narrative because the 2020 election is just right around the corner. And the polls show that Trump's got a 54% approval rating. And Biden's slipping in the polls. And not a lot of people like Biden. Not a lot of people like Elizabeth Warren. So what can we do to save the Democratic Party? I know. We're going to come up with a fake narrative, a fake story, so that we come out looking on top, as always. And the problem with that is you're going to find yourself losing the House, losing the Senate, losing the presidency. Because I think I'm not the only American at this point in time who's just fed up with it all. And the fact is, plenty of people in America are also fed up with it. Corruption has continued to fester in Ukraine. In May, the country's new president, Vladimir Zelensky, came into office with no political experience, but with bold promises to put an end to the corruption practices. Around this time, Giuliani began reaching out to Zelensky and his aides to press for government investigation into Burisma and Hunter Biden's role with the company. Key words here. You're not seeking an investigation of Joe Biden. You're seeking an investigation of his son, Hunter Biden. But the Democrats want to say, well, that's outreaching. You're going against everything that you swore an oath to. I mean, what he swore an oath to is to protect the American people and the American way of life. To put America first, which he has been doing. Every time Trump puts an end to, some type of corruption, we find ourselves in more of a scandal with Trump because the Democrats don't want you to hear the voice of the truth. And, the Bible does say that a lie will become a truth and a truth will become a lie. And I kind of feel like that's where we're at in our day of life is the more loud noises that you make about a certain lie, the more people who are naive, who don't want to look into an issue are going to believe it versus, somebody who's telling the truth. And, we're finding ourselves going through this and I'm just wondering how many more times are we going to continue to go down a path that finds us no certain end? Are we so naive to sit here and believe that, the Democrats say that the Constitution is a living embodiment. The Second Amendment was never intended for the AR-15. The Second Amendment was intended to protect yourself from the government. That's what it's for. And the quickest way to corrupt a government or the biggest way to run a government in a way that you don't want it to be ran is to disarm its citizens. That's why we have the Second Amendment. But yet here we find ourselves, questioning, guns are bad. And, I always think of, when you have some Democrat out there saying, guns are bad. I don't know the audience that we have. I don't know what your ages are, but, when I was in high school, there was a show. It's called South Park. And, the guidance counselor will always come out, and I honestly think that every person that goes in front of the mic when it comes to the Second Amendment or anything about Donald Trump is the guidance counselor from South Park. Just the guns are bad, okay, guns are bad, drugs are bad,
President Trump is bad, okay? Hey, you need to listen to what we're saying down in the Democratic Party, down in the House. We're gonna take you to school, okay? Okay, cause guns are bad, and the president's bad, and we're gonna work towards, vindicating ourselves of being idiots, cause everybody's wrong, but we're right, okay?
I mean, that's literally what I hear every time one of them gets on the mic. And, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I offend you. It is what it is, in my opinion. We're going to move on to college football and get away from, the political spectrum. After opening season with 4 consecutive day games, the South Carolina Gamecock football team will play under the lights for the first time this season when they host the Kentucky Wildcats in a 7:30 p.m. contest at Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday, September 28th. The SEC office announced today the game will be televised on the SEC network. And the reason it's going to be televised on the SEC network is nobody really wants to watch it. Who all out there wants to watch the Gamecocks lose to Kentucky with a head coach who's not only on the hot seat, is an idiot? I love, I had somebody recently reach out to us in an email, and he said, why do you think, Muschamp's not successful? Because the first half of every game that he plays, he does the exact same thing in the second half. And the part of being a successful football coach is, during halftime, you take notes of the team that you're playing, what they're doing. And, if they're being successful and they're, it's a tight game or it's a close game or, you're getting blown out, this is your chance to pull your players aside and say, look, man, we need to run it this way. We need to start doing press coverage or man coverage, or we need to double up on this guy. But, what I imagine goes on in the South Carolina Gamecocks locker room is, hey, guys, let's keep showboating and celebrating minuscule tackles, because, let's hoot and holler every time that, somebody runs 25 or receives 15 yards in front of us, and get up, slap our helmets, slap each other around, and, let's celebrate the fact that we didn't do anything because we're such a great football team. And offense, what I want us to do is pass the ball first, second down, or better yet, let's run the ball first and second down. Then we'll throw when we're third and long, and we'll shake our heads going, why can't we go any further? Is it anything because you're an idiot? Or you're just a terrible coach? He's on the hot seat. The Gamecocks hold a 17-12-1 advantage in all time series with Kentucky, including 8-5-1 mark when playing in Columbia. The Wildcats have won each of their last 5 meetings between the two schools, after the Gamecocks had won 13 of the previous 14 contests, including 10 in a row, from 2000 to 2009, which means South Carolina had Kentucky's number under the Spurrier era, but they don't have their number under the Muschamp era. Because Will Muschamp, and, I joke when I call him Will Muschamp, but, you can't get away from him. And the simple fact is the school made the biggest mistake hiring him, but it is what it is. Clemson, South Carolina, it's been 1 year since all blank broke loose at Clemson. It's strange to look back now knowing how the story is. But the 7 days last September between the Tigers' Week 4 win over Georgia Tech with their near disaster in Week 5 against Syracuse were enough to convince senior receiver Hunter Renfrow it was the most exhausting week of his career. In that 1 week, the nation's most talked about recruit became Clemson's new starting quarterback, the incumbent QB, who had gone 19-2 as a starter, left the program with just a text message to his coach, the guy who was once the 5th string quarterback, had to the rescue the Tigers from playoff oblivion. And a year later, it's all worked out pretty well. Clemson won a title, but They talk about the recruit Trevor Lawrence and the incumbent Kelly Bryant found a home. Renfro finished his career with 2 passing yards, but the story of the preposterous week will go on in Clemson's lore, and the week will possibly turning point in the team destined to become college football's first 15-0 champions. No matter what you have to say about Clemson, Dabo Swinney has had a turning point, and the moment of truth came September 22nd, 2018 in Atlanta. For the first game of the season, Brian and Lawrence had taken turns at QB, the veteran handling the most impactful drives against Texas A&M and the freshman getting his feet wet. Against Georgia Tech, however, there was a seismic shift in performance. Brian was mediocre and completed 6 of 10 passes and failed to throw a touchdown. Lawrence threw 4 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence is the real deal. And, I'm not jumping on the Clemson bandwagon. I'm not jumping on the Dabo Swinney bandwagon. I'm a Carolina Gamecocks fan through and through. I will stay that way because I was unfortunate enough to be raised that way. And, I've had plenty of friends go, well, you can always start rooting for the Bulldogs. You can always root for these guys. Yeah, it's kind of hard to do that when, you've got Carolina stuff all over. I'm a huge Carolina fan, but, I want to give credit where credit's due. I think Dabo Swinney's doing a great job. Dabo Swinney, I would love to see, Clemson, and I've said it more than once, I would love to see Clemson find themselves in the SEC and getting out of the ACC. But, the ACC fans are going to sit there and say, well, look what he's done against Texas A&M. Look what he's done against South Carolina. Look what he's done against... And, if Clemson were to come over to the ACC and have to play Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, South Carolina every year, and then have 2 schools from the West, which could be Alabama, which could be LSU, I don't think Clemson's going to be that successful. And the reason for it is because no one in the SEC ever goes, a perfect year. And, that goes back to when LSU made the playoffs and Alabama made the playoffs the same year. Every fan, and outside of the SEC was mad about it because, well, LSU got a loss. And LSU dominated everybody, but their loss was to Alabama. So, you got to sit there and go, well, yeah, this team might have got destroyed by Alabama, or, this team might have got a loss on their record in the SEC championship to Alabama or to Georgia. But the simple fact is, when they played everyone else outside their conference, or they played people in the SEC, they dominated. Their only loss was to an SEC opponent who just happens to also be in the top 10. So, I think that's where we're starting to get things right with the playoffs. But, in college football playoff terminology, I do want to say that where we lack a lot of things is when we give credit to colleges who don't play anybody. And, if your schedule is weak, I don't think you should be in the top, whatever of, your school. I do find this hilarious. So, the Post and Courier newspaper in Columbia mentioned something that I mentioned on Monday, which is South Carolina needs to get rid of Muschamp, but they can't because of the finances. So an $18.75 million buyout for Muschamp. That's what South Carolina would have to pay to get rid of him. Fans of the South Carolina Gamecocks football program, with their interests of lack thereof, will vote over the next few months on the future of suddenly embattled head coach Will Muschamp. He told us this week the best place, deepest South Carolina team. The Gamecocks go into the SEC home against recent nemesis Kentucky on Saturday night with a 1-3 record and critical questions. One of those questions was South Carolina a mere play to away from wins and losses from North Carolina and Missouri, part of the disturbing trend? The simple fact is this: South Carolina was going to lose North Carolina. They were going to lose Missouri. They were 1 or 2 plays away from pulling out a victory. Mac Brown made the adjustments he should have made going in the second half. Will Muschamp's team didn't make a single adjustment. In fact, they kept doing the same thing they were doing in the first half. Is it unwise to make a change with recruiting still going well, or does the losing record forecast a dip in the program? Yeah, if you lose a bunch of games and you have no SEC championship, if you have no national championship, if you're going nowhere in your program, yes, it is going to affect you going into next year's recruiting class. Because, I said this Tuesday and on Monday. I'll say it again to, our people that love tuning in a Leroy Brown talk show. It's this. You're not going to choose. If I'm a college football player or I'm a high school player looking at going to college, and I have a chance to go to LSU, winning program, Georgia, winning program, Alabama, winning program, Clemson, winning program, Florida, winning program. Yeah, they still stink, but they're still a winning program. History. Or am I going to go to an unproven school with a coach whose record really shows that you're unproven? Gee, I wonder which way the recruits go. They're going to go to the Alabamas. They're going to go to the winning programs. They're going to go to the coaches that provide them the best opportunity to, one, get nationally recognized to go into the NFL, or give them the best shot of going into the NFL. For some players, even though they're a mediocre kid in high school, if they have a chance to go to Division I, they look at it as an opportunity to go pro. You're not going to limit yourself in an opportunity to grow in your program. If you don't believe me, look at players like Minshew in Jacksonville. Look at Julian Edelman. Look at Hall of Fame wide receiver Jerry Rice. You could look at what is his name? He went to Marshall. Anyway, it'll come to me. But if you look at any player before they went in the NFL, they were no names in high school. They were nobodies. But some of the best Hall of Fame players tuned their game enough when they went to Division I to be able to compete at an NFL level. They also had coaches that took them there. For instance, the Miami coach who also coached at the Dallas Cowboys, Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson took those players, and a lot of them played for the Cowboys, by the way, like Michael Irvin, and took them to new levels that they themselves would have never found themselves in had it not been for his coaching. Depending on where you go in college also depends on where you're going to go in your career if you continue to play football, or where you're also going to go as an adult leaving that program, because those coaches also mentor, and I just don't see it. I don't see it in the Muschamp program. If you enjoy listening to the Leroy Brown Talk Show, I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to give us a call at 706-738-9191 and sponsor this show. The only reason we're able to stay on the air and talk to you about veteran events, along with things that matter most within the CSRA, is by your sponsorship. If you'd like to sponsor, like our good friend Stan McDaniel at State Farm Insurance, you're welcome to do that. If you're also looking for insurance, you can give Stan McDaniel at State Farm a call at 706-723-5200. You can also go to his office at 3404 Peach Orchard Road in Augusta, Georgia. That zip code is 30906. If you enjoy the Leroy Brown Talk Show, be sure to follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. You can also listen to us on our podcast on 929soulmine.com, along with listening through the TuneIn app just by clicking the WYBO 929 emblem. You can also listen to us through YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You can message us at LeroyBrownTalkShow@gmail.com. And I encourage you to keep following us, keep liking us, and keep tuning in. And as always, remember, CSRA, if your main chute doesn't deploy, you have your reserve on standby. I'm your host, Addison Leroy Brown, signing off.